My whole life, I've been told what was impossible, what you'll never do, what you'll never become. And very few people told me what was possible and what I could become. If you break down impossible, it says I'm possible. As a kid, I was always super active and I loved goofing around with my brothers. I'm a triplet, so there was definitely 3 times the trouble and 3 times the craziness. Dancing has always been my passion, and I loved performing. But I was also drawn to swimming into the water. There's something so freeing about gliding through the water, and at 11 years old, I had my entire life ahead of me. But that's when things changed forever. One day, without any notice, my body suddenly started shutting down. Like a circuit breaker in a house, slowly each switch started to shut off. And then eventually, the lights went out, and I was trapped inside my body, unable to move, talk, and function. I was diagnosed with 2 rare autoimmune conditions, and there was little to no hope for recovery. But I felt the love of my family, and I could hear their words of encouragement and hope. Even though they couldn't hear me, I heard them. They were fighting for me, and I was fighting for them. But there were days I would lose a lot of hope. I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to prepare for the possibility of dying. And then I had this moment and this epiphany, if you will, where I realized, wait a second, this is not how my story is supposed to end. And so I made a promise with God. If you give me this second chance at life, I promise you I will not waste a single moment. And from there, I knew I had to fan the flame. And I realized this is happening. This is actually happening. Winning gold and 3 silver medals at the Paralympic Games is something I'll never forget. But I knew deep down there was still more work I had to do. I had to continue to redefine what was possible and get back everything that was taken away from me. And the one thing that I had yet to conquer was walking and dancing.
That was better! That was so much better!
After spending 10 years in a wheelchair, there were days I would go to Project Walk, I would go to my training sessions, and I didn't know if I was possible. I'm possible. Today my life has limitless possibilities, and I even realized one of my sports dreams becoming one of the youngest on-air talents hired by ESPN. And today I can say I've realized another dream, being a contestant on Dancing with the Stars. I would never choose what happened to me, but I would never change it. I will use my voice to change the world. Spreading hope, spreading love, and spreading light. Because the world needs that. That's enough for me. That is what makes all of this worthwhile.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Victoria Arlen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, hi. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I haven't even spoken yet, and you guys are already giving me an applause. So should I just walk now? Was that good? Yeah? Well, thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone here at NeoLife, for having me here today. Now, I have to say, this is my first in-person speech since March of 2020. So, bear with me. But also, can we all just take a moment and say how blessed and fortunate we all are able to be here today and to be healthy and be able to be here together. And so it truly is nothing like standing in person in front of all of you. And today is also, we all had to pivot this year, as we all know. And so to be here in person with all of you, I couldn't think of a better company and a better group of humans to kind of kick off me breaking out of my little COVID cave and my virtual speaking. So thank you for all of you guys. And also today is a very special day as well because my mom is here. So shout out to all the mamas. she's here, and we're having a little mommy-daughter time. But as you will find out shortly, not only is my mom my rock and my best friend, but we've been through a pretty crazy journey together, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that while I was able to find some silver linings over the past year and a half, it's really been mentally and emotionally draining. I think we all can attest to that. And it was during some of those low points that I forced myself to go back and think about how I have climbed out a few holes in my past. And as I'll share with you in a few minutes, I'm no stranger to rock bottom. In fact, I'm actually a frequent flyer there. So one of the things, though, that helped me get back on my feet during some pretty dark times in my past was my faith and being able to focus on gratitude, which I think we all kind of learned the hard way about gratitude this year, and recognizing that even the smallest of things that I had to be grateful for, which was often not easy, when I did that, it became this catalyst to bouncing back. It not only surviving, but figuring out how to thrive and how to get back all that was taken away from me. And with a whole lot of faith and miracles among the messiness, that is what I'd like to talk about today. So, to do that, I'm going to ask you to play along with me for a bit. I'm going to begin by asking you to give me some audience participation, because I've been staring at a Zoom screen for the last year and a half and being like, all right, everyone, participate. And people are like, yeah, okay, I'm cooking dinner right now. So I can see you all now. So now we're really going to participate. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Everyone, close your eyes. If you have to put them with your hands, just close them. Keep them closed and don't open till I tell you. Promise me. Come along with me for a minute, for real, and try to feel what I felt during one of the most terrifying times of my life. Imagine being trapped. What comes to mind for you? Imagine being trapped. What do you envision? What does that look like for you? Are you stuck in an elevator? In some room with a stuck door that you can't seem to open? Or maybe you're in a basement with no windows and no clear way out. But I'm not talking about any of those. Imagine being trapped within your own body. You're unable to move. You can't turn your head. You can't lift a finger. You can't even blink an eye. Nothing. You're completely trapped within your own body. But now imagine that even though you're trapped inside yourself, you can see, you can hear. In fact, you can hear everything going on around you, but nobody knows that you can. You are you on the inside, but the connection to this vehicle of your body, this means of reaching the outside world, it's broken, and it won't respond. You try to call out, I'm here, I'm right here. You shout it at the top of your lungs, but those lungs won't respond. Your lips won't move, and nothing comes out, and nobody knows that you are in there. You can hear the doctors right there in front of you telling your parents that you're never going to recover, and that you'll remain in this permanent vegetative state forever, and that if you don't die, they should probably put you in a special care facility and try to move on with their lives and try to find some sense of normalcy again. But I'm right here. I'm still here. You shout again and again and again with no result. You can hear your family crying by your bedside, the people you love holding your hand, begging you not to leave them. But I'm right here. I'm right here. You keep trying, but nobody can hear you. Open your eyes. Feels like a nightmare, right? A little bit? Don't worry. We'll get through this. This nightmare that I just described to you was my reality not too long ago. My whole world turned upside down when two incredibly rare neurological conditions struck my body like a head-on collision, causing irreversible damage to my brain and spinal cord, leaving my family and the people I loved in absolute turmoil, desperately trying to find answers and pick up the debris and look for any sign of hope. Transverse myelitis and acute disseminated encephalomyelitis. These words are difficult to pronounce as an adult, let alone as an 11-year-old, but this is what happened to me.
And hauntingly, if only my doctors had been more familiar with these words, everything that happened to me, 4 years in a vegetative state, having to relearn how to eat, talk, sit up, function, move, 10 years in a wheelchair, all of that could have been prevented by a dose of steroids. But guess what? That didn't happen. Now, before we get to those details, let me give you a bit of the backstory, because before all of this, I was simply a little girl with big dreams. I had dreams of being a gold medalist, being on television, changing the world, helping people. Whatever it was, I had big dreams and plenty of them. But then one day I didn't feel well. I was 11 at the time, and I remember that my back and right side ached. And eventually, this led to doctors diagnosing me with appendicitis. They took out my appendix, a simple fix. Except that wasn't it. But that seems that was the catalyst that somehow set off the storm brewing inside my body. And the wrath of that storm would very quickly cause my entire body to shut down. The best way I can describe this is to ask you to think of that circuit breaker in your house and all of those switches. And with the storm that was raging on inside my body, little by little, each one of those switches was being tripped, and I lost more and more power and more control. The first switch, my legs began to give out, and it started in my feet, and I began to lose sensation, but at the same time they were hurting me. Like, you know when your legs fall asleep and you're like walking on? No? Am I just looking like a fool? No? Okay. Suddenly, my legs would give out for no reason, and they would just buckle, and the strength and function of my legs was quickly disappearing, and not before long, just like that, I was paralyzed. Within 2 weeks, I went from running, jumping, standing on my own 2 feet to being stuck in a wheelchair. Didn't stop there. The second switch, my fine motor skills began to quickly deteriorate, and very quickly my arms, hands, my head, nothing would move. Every motion became more and more disconnected. Simple things like sitting up, holding my head up, grabbing a glass of water, holding a fork, or even scratching my nose became virtually impossible. And then the third switch, my voice started to give out. Every word became less and less clear, and I began to slur my words, and yet in my own mind I was speaking clear as day. And it wasn't until it was gone altogether that I was completely silenced by the storm and no longer able to communicate. Yet despite all of this, I don't remember being scared. I was so young at the time that I don't think I had the maturity or the full-on understanding to really realize the severity of what was happening to me. I never considered that this could be a permanent condition or that it might even be terminal. I remember, honestly, the innocence of a child thinking that I was going to feel better the next day and that tomorrow I'd go back to swim practice. Tomorrow I could go to dance class. Tomorrow I could just go back to school and be with my friends. Tomorrow, maybe things would be better. But for my parents, they were terrified and scrambling for answers, and they were watching their only daughter deteriorate right in front of them, growing worse and worse by the day. They were racing against what appeared to be a very fast-moving, deteriorating condition and getting no meaningful answers as to what was wrong with their child. And if you can believe this, more than one doctor told my parents initially I was doing this for attention. Because that makes sense, right? You see, I'm a triplet. I have an older brother and 2 triplet brothers, so unable to explain what was happening to me, doctors went so far to suggest to my parents that this was all for a cry for attention, and that it was psychosomatic. Because I'm the only girl of 3 boys, you don't think I get enough attention? Logic. But it wasn't until the final switch, when all the lights went out, that everything changed. Darkness. Complete, total darkness. And by this point, it was very obvious that I wasn't faking and that something was seriously wrong with me, and we had gotten these soul-crushing diagnoses of these 2 rare and debilitating conditions, but the prognosis for the future was way worse. Over and over, doctors told my parents they needed to accept the very real possibility that I would not survive, and even if I did, the Victoria they once knew was never coming back. And while my family was willing to accept the diagnosis, they refused to throw up their hands and accept that this was all my future had in store, that this was it. They accepted the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. Let me say that one more time. They accepted the diagnosis, but not the prognosis, because the prognosis that they had in mind was very different than what they were being told. Somehow, they believed with a whole lot of faith that I was not a lost cause. And I believe with all my heart that it was their refusal to accept that prognosis and having the faith to believe in a miracle that brought me back to life. So, this was my life for quite some time. This is my awkward teen years, okay? That's what we're gonna put it like. I lay in this vegetative state, completely unresponsive, in my own home, and really unaware of what's going on around me. So thankfully, I don't remember too much of this exact time, so I call it my darkness period. But my family remembers it, and they remember it well, and I have to believe for them, as many parents are here could even imagine, it must have been nearly unbearable to hold out hope for so long while getting nothing, absolutely nothing back in return. Talk about the example of keeping the faith. And that faith never wavered, no matter what doctor or expert told my parents to write my obituary. And then one day, the switch that controls my brain went back on, and I woke up. Except there's a catch. That was the only switch that turned back. None of the other switches turned back into place. So I was there, in my body, but I couldn't connect to the outside world. Nothing else worked. So there was no way for me to let anyone know that I was in there. And that was the moment I first remembered being scared. That is when I remember being terrified that this was it. When I started today, that's what I asked you to imagine, that feeling of being trapped and completely disconnected. Now I could see and hear things, but no one knew that I could. In fact, now I could see and hear everything, even the things I especially didn't want to hear. I heard doctors having actual conversations with my parents that I was never going to come out of this, and that despite desperately trying to scream at them, there was no way for me to connect. I even heard doctors having conversations when my parents weren't in the room, saying, "Can you believe this kid's parents think that she's gonna make it? This kid's a goner." Over and over and over again. And I'm hearing this. Thankfully, I'm stubborn and said, "I'll show you." It's good to be a little stubborn and sassy, you know what I mean? You gotta be sassy and classy. But for me, hearing that, I was like, why are you writing the ending of my story? How many times do we let people do that? And as all this was going on, despite trying to scream at them, despite, trying to have that positive attitude, I also realized, what if this is it for me? What if I'm forever to be the way I am right now, hearing the world around me, but locked away from it, locked inside myself, not being able to say some maybe suggestive words to doctors to be like, "Stop calling me a goner." And that was really terrifying to think about. And so I did what I think any kid would do in that situation. In fact, I did what I think any person in this room would do in that situation. I tried not to think about it. I tried to push those thoughts out of my head as fast as I could, starting with the mere fact of me being like, "I'll show you." And as I awoke from this darkness, I was really left with my only thoughts and a lot of time to think. Almost too much time to think. Like, no one should ever have that much time in their brain because it's a very noisy place. And I remember during this time with nothing else on my hands other than borrowed time, if you will, because at this point, I didn't know how much time I had left. I didn't know if I had an hour to go in my life or if I had a day to go or a year to go. And so I knew that instead of going down this path of negative thinking, which I knew got really scary really fast, I began to think about everything I had to be grateful for. Now, when I've mentioned that thought to people before, I've gotten some looks like what I can imagine some of you guys are thinking. You're probably thinking along the lines of, what did you possibly have to be grateful for? Your life had completely fallen apart. You're laying there trapped inside your own body. You can't even scratch your own nose. What do you have to be grateful for? Fair point. But yet with all of this time on my hands, I was able to find things to be grateful for, starting with the simple fact that my mind was now working enough that I could have these thoughts of self-evaluation. And the more I thought about it, the more that list grew. I had my brain. I wasn't dead, right? I don't know if we have any Monty Python fans in the room, but I'm not dead yet. Oh, but you will be. Doctors were saying that to me. I'm like, but I'm not dead. I'm still here. Now, you're probably thinking, if I'm starting with the fact that I'm not dead, that I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel to get some good news and some gratitude. And you know what? You are absolutely right. I really was scraping for it, but it was a good start and a big one from the plus column. And frankly, for every doctor that said I was a goner, every day that I woke up, I knew I was proving someone wrong. You have to believe in you before anyone else is going to believe in you. So if you think you're a goner, you're a goner. If you think you're going to survive this, the odds are very much in your favor. And so as I continue to shift my focus to gratitude, the most amazing thing happened. The most amazing chain of events that eventually brought me back to life. When I began to feel this sense of gratitude, it changed my perspective. That fear I felt every night when I would be going to sleep that I maybe might not wake up again began to weaken, because instead of writing my obituary, I started writing my bucket list. What am I going to do when I get out of this? So things weren't quite as dark as they had once been, and instead of being focused on the negative, which there was a lot of negativity, I began to see the positive a bit more. And then with that different perspective, it ignited a very powerful thing: hope. It gave some strength to this idea that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe instead of this obituary coming to life, this bucket list, I could start checking things off. And I believe me focusing on that gratitude, which changed my perspective, which when I created a lot of hope that continued to play in my brain, eventually led to a tiny little breakthrough. Tiny in movement, but enormous in magnitude. I regained the ability to blink. And that little thing we take for granted that we've done hundreds of times today, millions of times a year, it became my lifeline. Suddenly, I had a way to communicate. 2 blinks for yes and 1 very dramatic blink for no. For old time's sake. Now, I'll never forget that moment that I reconnected with my mom. I've always been told I have these big brown eyes, as you just witnessed. And so, even as a baby, I had a big head and these big eyeballs that didn't match my body. Hopefully, I've grown into it. We shall see. Mindset. But I was staring, right? I was like, okay, this is my moment. I don't know how much time I have left for this, but this is my moment. And so my mom walked into the room and I was staring at her intensely. Not the typical, they were fixed and kind of over, and it felt like forever. I'm sure it wasn't. But she turned and she looked and she stopped dead in her tracks, because wouldn't you if I was like we all would kind of stop and be like, oh God. But I was staring at her, and up until this point, I didn't have any control of my eyes. So they were very fixed. They roll back. They kind of would just be, they weren't there. And as my mom, as we spoke now, she was kind of like, they didn't focus. You were very much just, it was fixed. We couldn't see your sparkle. And so they definitely couldn't follow anyone around the room. So here I'm thinking, this is my Olympics, all right? My eyeballs move to the left, move to the right. They go up, they go down, and I can stare. This is awesome. And so she came towards me. Our eyes are now very much locked in on each other. And she kind of came towards me, and she was hesitant. This is 4 years in the making. And she asked me one simple question. Victoria, if you can hear me, can you blink twice? Well, guess what I did, guys? I'm not going to blink twice. I'm just going to keep blinking. I'm going to keep blinking. Basically, trying to say, I'm here. She's back. Now, in that moment, she, of course, burst into tears of joy. And in that singular, miraculous, teeny tiny moment, the weight of the world was lifted from her shoulders. And it was undoubtedly one of the most powerful moments I've ever shared with anyone. She grabbed her phone, she called my dad, and she said, she's back. Victoria is back. She's looking right at me. She's responding. We are communicating. Now, I was able to communicate, and slowly but surely, I began to recover. Because all you need is a little spark. You just need one miracle to get that everything else in motion. And I'll jump ahead to share that eventually I was able to learn how to talk again, which I haven't stopped doing. I haven't stopped talking since, so I managed to just kind of make a career out of just talking a lot, and maybe people listen to me, so. And I began to kind of start getting back into the world. I gained more and more movement and began to relearn things like how to talk, how to eat, how to sit up, how to move. And you can be sure that with each tiny new bit of regained ability, I grew more and more grateful. This cycle of being grateful for each moment and each tiny new step of progress continued to change my perspective. It kept me focused on the positive, which created a lot more hope and that things would continue to get better. You can't stop. And when I mixed in a lot of hard work, eventually led to more and more progress. It was undoubtedly my breakthrough formula, and it was my roadmap back to life. This whole cycle of gratitude, perspective change, hope, and effort led me to getting out of that hospital bed and into a wheelchair, a hot pink one, I might add, where for the first time in nearly 4 years, I was able to move on my own and independently and run over people's feet along the way. Not on purpose, sometimes. And then one day, my brothers, without my parents' permission, or mine I should add, this was probably 4 months coming out of the vegetative state, right? So you would think they would be gentle and kind, not my family, decided it was time for me to swim again, just like I'd loved to do before I'd gotten sick, because at 5 years old, I told my mom I was gonna win a gold medal as a swimmer. So they strapped on a life jacket, threw me in the pool, literally, grabbed my arms, grabbed my legs, and said, well, you're gonna learn how to swim again. And I'd like to say I went in kicking and screaming, but my legs didn't work, so you can be sure I made up for it in the screaming department. You can be sure, like, it was very traumatic, but in that moment, they didn't let go of me. And they got me over that initial fear of drowning, which was so much grander than just drowning. It was afraid of, how do I step back into a life that I've been so far away from for so long? And so having that leap, being almost thrown into the water, was like sometimes you just have to jump in. Because in the water, I realized I didn't need my legs. And it was a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. And so that baptism, if you will, led me to getting back into the pool and swimming on my own. It led me to competing again as a swimmer, which I hadn't done before I'd gotten sick. And 2 years, almost to the day, it led me to the London 2012 Games and led me to multiple world records broken and a gold and 3 silver medals. But it was once again another moment where you set your intentions, you set your goals. It doesn't matter the circumstances that surround it. You are the one that can make or break it. And by this point, my life had turned around, and I was incredibly blessed to have my mind and most of my body back, aside from my hot pink and gold wheelchair. And I had this great opportunity going at ESPN, but I still didn't have my legs back. And I had always held out hope that maybe just someday I could get everything that was taken back from me. And that someday I could stand again on my own, and I could maybe not be in Butts View permanently all the time, because it was yoga pants in high school, and that was not fun, being in a wheelchair with all that. And I felt like, honestly, I needed one more blink. Doctors have never been able to tell us why I got so sick in the first place, and why I regained the ability to blink, and why I'm able to be having a conversation with all of you guys today. And not much more of a blink of an eye, all of these things happened. And I think at this point, now that I had everything back except my legs, I felt like all I needed was one more blink. All you need is a blink, folks. All you need is a blink. My parents never forgot the promise that they made for me back when I was first grasping everything that had happened to me. They promised me that they would do everything they can to help me get back everything that was taken away from me, and they would leave no stone unturned. And it was that promise that led us to a world-renowned paralysis recovery center in California. Now, they treat everything from spinal cord injuries, stroke, MS, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, all kinds of neurological conditions. And my mom thought that maybe they could help me. And for the first few weeks of trying, we got nothing out of my legs, nothing at all, not even a twitch, because it had almost been a decade at this point. And honestly, it appeared to be a total bust. And obviously, that was very disappointing. But I knew I couldn't give up, and I needed just one more blink, just like when I had been in that vegetative state for nearly 4 years and was like, well, how am I going to get out of this? And we had been there a few weeks, and it was then time to go back home to New Hampshire. And as the story goes, it was on our way home that my mom had an epiphany. We love epiphanies, don't we? I love epiphanies. And so she called my dad, and she said, Larry, do you remember how we talked about how the doctors told us we shouldn't mortgage the house chasing down this crazy dream that Victoria maybe could walk again? Remember how we talked about me going back to work now that all the kids are grown up and Victoria's doing so well? To which my dad, shout out to all the dads, was like, yes, where are you going with this? My mom said, well, I want to open up a Project Walk here on the East Coast where Victoria could get the therapy every single day and we could help all kinds of other people like her get this sort of treatment. We could help other families like ours. I figured out the numbers, and we can do it if we mortgage the house. By now, you probably know enough about my mom and my family to know that they're not the type of people that give up. And so they mortgaged the house, and Project Walk Boston was born. When it opened, I was in there every single day, twice a day, training like an NFL running back, getting ready for my first shot at the pros. And this led to the tiniest flicker of activity in one of my hip flexors, and it had been the blink that we had all been desperately searching for. And it was something. It wasn't much, but it was something. And with that, that hope came pouring back, because all you need is one spark. You need a blink, a spark, whatever ignites it. You just need a little miracle. And with the help of some amazing trainers, I learned to stand again, to take a step, to walk, to jump, which I'm not good at landing even still, and to run, although I look like a baby giraffe when I run, so I will not be demonstrating that. And all of that led me to Hollywood and being able to do this.
It's the strangest feeling that I get. Dreaming of your lips, kissing my lips, with the world at our fingertips. You know we never give it up. You know we never give it up. You know we never give it up. Never give it up. Ain't afraid to take you on, baby. When I know you love me, so come get me. Let me know who you are, come on, baby. Ain't afraid to take you on, baby. When I know you love me, so come get me. Let me know who you are, come on, baby.
Thank you. Thank you. It's crazy watching that because I had only been walking without any supports or any help for a year at that point. So the whole time I'm thinking, I'm like, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, because everyone's watching and you're gonna fall in pink fringy pants. Now, before I go any further, I want to share with you one of the key learnings of my life so far. So are you guys ready for this? Life is better in pink fringy pants. I'm telling you, you can do anything in those, and you can never have a bad day wearing hot pink fringy pants. So I'm telling you, next time you're trying to figure out what to wear, give it a try, hit me up on Instagram, let me know how it goes. I promise you, you will not have a bad day, and the people around you will not have a bad day as well. If you get nothing out of this talk, the pink fringy pants, I'm like, all right, start a revolution. I didn't pack mine, it wouldn't fit in my carry-on. Maybe next time. I have mine, they're actually hanging up in my closet, and I'm always like, one day they'll come back out. If I'm having a bad day, I just put them on, just give myself a little shimmy. Everyone needs a shimmy time, okay? Set some time for every day to have a little shimmy. It's a good for the soul. Aside from that note, I want to leave you with one other final thought. I was very young when my life took a very sudden and dramatic turn for the worse, and it is truly my sincere prayer that none of you ever go through anything like it. But I can assure you will come upon your own challenges in life. Some big, some small, and for sure, challenges, obstacles, problems, whatever you call them, whatever you face, unfortunately, as we've all learned the hard way, they're part of life. But I've found that the real suffering doesn't come from the challenge or the obstacle itself. It comes from the things we tell ourselves about the consequences, about the future, about what's going to happen because of what already happened. Let me say that one more time. The real suffering doesn't come from the challenge or the obstacle itself. It comes from the things we tell ourselves about what's going to happen because of what already happened. The real terror for me was not the illness itself. It was the things I was telling myself about the future that was really scary. Would I be locked in forever? Would I ever be able to connect with the outside world again? Would I ever be able to hug my mom again? You can't think about that. You can't think about that. You have to be here. This is the gift of the present. So when life hits back at you, when these unwelcomed and unexpected challenges test you and try to break you, when that happens, you can either let those obstacles pull you down, or you can stop, take a deep breath, and take a moment to find things in your own life that you have to be grateful for. I can assure you that even when it appears you've hit rock bottom, and trust you me, I'm a frequent flyer at Rock Bottomville, even there are always things to be grateful for. When you do that, when you focus on what you do have, you will find it changes your perspective, and that change in perspective creates hope. Hope that tomorrow will be just a bit better than today, maybe even more. And when you take that hope and you mix in a lot of your own hard work and you show up, I believe you will find yourself on the path to living out your dreams. And I'm truly thankful to have had this opportunity to share my story with you all today, and I wish you all peace, health, and many, many blessings. And we're going to do a Q&A, so thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Does anybody have a question for Victoria? Raise your hand. Caesar's over there. I'm on this aisle.
And before we do the Q&A, I want everyone to stand up one more time. Real quick, don't worry. I'm going to share with you a mantra, and I want you to give me your best superhero pose. Superhero pose. What's your power pose? Yep, that's a power pose. That's a power pose. That's a power pose. Come on, don't let me down, people, because I'm going to give you my power pose. What's your power pose? What's your power pose? Give me your power pose. All right. Now that you feel good, hold your power pose. Superheroes don't let it down. Give me your power pose, and I want you to repeat this mantra after me. Ready? Face it. Embrace it. Defy it. And conquer it. Woo! I got so excited for the Q&A, I forgot. Now you can sit or keep doing your pose. It's whatever you want. Well, we're going to do a Q&A now.
So thank you. You reaffirmed for me a thought I've had for a long time when my grandparents had Alzheimer's, and family members are saying, she doesn't know anything and she can't hear you, and we still try to talk to her as if she was normal. So I really appreciate that hope. We're dealing with more and more of that nowadays. Also, I'm interested in your thoughts on that issue.
On hope?
On Alzheimer's.
On Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
So I'm no expert on Alzheimer's, but I do believe that every person, every patient, doesn't matter their prognosis or diagnosis, deserves to be treated the way you would want to be treated. To be talked to be treated like a human, to celebrate birthdays and Christmases, and to have that love and unconditional support. That's how I feel, is I think no one should ever be written off as a lost cause just because it's a devastating diagnosis or a scary diagnosis.
Well, I believe she still knew what was going on. I believe Grandma still knew, even though the rest of the family felt like she didn't hear, didn't know,
Yeah.
I believe she still did.
Yes, I believe too. They said the same thing about me, and my family never skipped a beat. I had a manicure. My mom gave me bangs, which might have been more traumatic than the actual vegetative state. Love you, Mom.
All right, we have a question on the right side here. Karen?
What a blessing it is
Thank
to have
you.
you here. And I remember watching that Dancing with the Stars and crying with tears of joy for you,
you.
for the recovery that you had. I remember you mentioning that you would often have numbness and moments where you kind of felt a little bit of a dead leg. And I know that you were working really hard to overcome that. Do you have moments where those things still happen? And if so, what do you do in order to gain function back or to keep a mindset of going forward?
So I still have complete numbness in my legs from here down. I can't feel anything. So for me, I have been really big into my morning rituals lately where I wake up and I'll always give myself 15 minutes earlier than I need to be up. And when I sit up, I put my feet on the ground and make a conscious decision to go, thank you. And then I stand up. And even though I can't feel the ground, I try to be like very thankful that even though it's not ideal, it's my ideal and it works for me. And so I think it's shifting that. And then if I do have a bad leg day or if I have a day where my legs are acting up, I still find the gratitude, but they're still working and I'm still getting from point A to point B and they're not perfect. And I'm very thankful that people in my life have a very fun, twisted sense of humor like me. So we just make it work. Like I had some health complications and I remember I was having trouble walking and like my whole family would be like, hey, because I'd be like, my legs would buckle and they're just like, hey, like that's a little stanky leg right there. And so they very much, like, I think it's the mindset, and if you can laugh about it, or if I'm walking funny, like, it's very much like you just gotta own it. You honestly have to own whatever your body can give you that day, own it, and appreciate it. Yeah.
Question.
Hi.
Are you going to be at the gala dinner tonight?
I cannot, no, I have to take the red eye out
I
tonight.
just want to know if I can have a dance, but thanks so much.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, my wife and I are parents of quadruplet girls, so we our faith has really carried us through sometimes, and even one of them passed away after 7.5 months. You mentioned faith briefly in your talk, and then obviously you're wearing a cross. And I haven't read your book yet, but what role did faith, even in when your body was not responding and all did that come into play?
Faith has been my saving grace and has been my anchor through all of this. I feel like I found my faith on a whole different level when no one could hear me, but God could hear me. And so I started handing it over to God and trusting God. And I have a very fierce, faith family. And my mom, I watched her pray, I watched her believe, and she would fill kind of my room with just positivity, and we would listen to different pastors and really just kind of kept reinstilling that God has a plan. And I remember there was one pastor, Joel Osteen, and he said, your story doesn't end in defeat. You're not a victim, you're a victor. And so I started kind of implementing a lot of those. And then I really, at one of my darkest moments, where I knew I was like, all right, I've cheated death 3 times at this point. Like, I don't know how many cards I have left in this situation. But I made a promise with God, and I said, if you give me back my life and my voice and my ability to not just come out of this and kind of get by, but the ability to get really out of this, I will use my voice to change the world. And I will take this mess and turn it into a message and help. If I can help one person, I'm going to do my best to do so. And so faith has always been my anchor. And then even as I came out of this and stuff, it's been my saving grace. And it's really interesting because you could have no faith, but you hear my story and you're like, oh, there's something greater that happened here. Because even every doctor and skeptic that was like, this makes no sense. And I was like, well, it's Jesus, but actually, like, where else is the explanation here? So it's played a huge role in my life, yeah. Yeah.
I'm over here.
Where'd you go?
Over here.
Hi.
Can we meet your mom?
Mom, you want to stand up?
Your team?
She's right back there. Mama!
All right, we have Dr. Tom over here on the right.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you so much for your life, your words of encouragement.
Thank you.
Last week, my wife and I found out that our niece went into the hospital with almost complete liver shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told that if she was able to make it 48 hours, there might be a chance that she could get a liver transplant. Well, we've gotten very good word in the last couple days that she got out of the hospital.
Wow.
But what you have given us and what I'm going to be able to take back to her is the hope that you've sent to us with your ability to fight, with your ability to utilize your faith in your healing. And you look exactly like my niece Rochelle.
Oh, thank you.
So the whole time that you were talking, I was sitting there looking at you, realizing that you look exactly like Rochelle, and we're so blessed to have you here today.
Thank you, and God bless you and your family. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story.
We have another one right here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Victoria, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
I, myself, share a similar experience like you.
Mm-hmm.
I was once locked in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I tell you this is this, because while I was locked in my body, I found my faith.
Yeah.
And in my faith, I asked the Lord to help me, not to let me go.
Yeah.
And I was given about 4 to 6 hours to live.
Wow.
And I promised him that if he would give me the opportunity to come back, I would read the Bible.
Yeah.
And I did. I read the Bible.
Amen.
And my progress has been coming. And I'll tell you this, and this is my question. What product helped you the most from NeoLife?
The what? What was the last one? Sorry.
What product helped you the most from NeoLife?
What part from NeoLife?
What product?
Oh, yes. It was delicious.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
very
it was.
big fan. Yeah, no, I had the shake this morning, and I have such a sensitive tummy, so I'm always trying to find. So Josh and I had a very in-depth conversation about it, and my mom and I were like, So we're new forever fans for sure, and the shake was so good. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Yeah.
You have a fan. You have a fan over here that would like to say something.
I love you.
Oh, thank you. Love you too.
Hi, Victoria. I'm over here on your right.
Oh, hi.
Nice to meet you. I just want to say thank you for sharing and for being bold and sharing your story. Because when I was 21, I had a similar experience. I wasn't necessarily paralyzed like you, but I lost my right ovary, and I had a softball-sized cyst, and I went septic. And the doctors thought that I was faking my pain. They told my mom that I was there for pain medication, and the story goes on and on. But I waited 3 days to go into surgery, and because of that, I lost my ovary, and I was very sick. And so I know what it's like to not have anyone advocating for you except for your family. And my mom felt very helpless, and so I got a little emotional looking at your mom, because I remember my mom in the hospital begging the doctors to help me, and they didn't think that anything was wrong. So anyways, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being bold. It's not necessarily a question, but I also made the same promise to God when I was on like tons of pain medication and getting rolled into surgery. Like, Lord, if you help me through this, I don't know what my future looks like, but I promise to help tons of women, you know, dealing with the same issues. And I have been blessed to be able to help, you know, many, many women with their health from that point on. So thank you for sharing and for being an advocate. So I just wanted to say that.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. You are such a blessing, and just you don't really know how much you've impacted all of us. But I want to shout out to our precious Sylvia and Mark. They're watching by Zoom. She couldn't be here today. She's part of our family, but she was also, she had a paralysis happen to her from actually it was found out it was from a tetanus shot.
Oh
and
gosh.
she wanted me to talk to you. So I just want to tell you, do you have any words of encouragement to her?
Yes.
It did a lot of nerve damage, but she's coming back. She's really alive because of God and because of our NeoLife products.
Yeah.
And we just thankful for you and
Oh,
for your
thank
word
you.
of encouragement to all of us.
Thank you. The words of encouragement, well, thank you. And I think the words of encouragement are, the storms don't last forever. And what comes after a really bad storm is a rainbow. And so to hold out hope for that rainbow and that sunshine, because as dark as and rainy and as cloudy as it can be, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And even if it's literally physically hard to do that, you'll get there eventually. And so I think just knowing that the storm doesn't last forever, and that even if you're in it, know that that sunshine is coming. And the rainbow, yeah. I love rainbows.
We have one last question here.
Hi, Victoria. It's just a blessing to hear you. And, God is large and in charge.
Amen.
My son, Michael, has multiple sclerosis, totally bedridden. He's had MS for many years now. We were in the hospital February 29th, or we were leaving February 29th, 2019. And they told me actually I had my quiet room talk, is what I labeled it. And no one was there at the hospital with me that day. We had been there 12 days. And the surgeon, the doctor, another doctor, and his assistant, we were all there in the quiet room talk. And they gave me all of this knowledge, and I asked questions and what have you. Actually, backing up a minute, he was having NeoLife all through the hospitalization. But anyway, they gave me all of this knowledge, and I asked questions to clarify my understanding, and they were sending us home for him to be comfortable, for Michael to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And what I told them, I said, God is the creator. I said, and God is the healer.
Amen.
And I put my hand like this to each one of them. I said, we pray for each of you to do the jobs that you do for us. We pray that the Lord will guide your hands. I said, and God has the last word.
Amen.
My Michael, he's 55, he's home. I would have brought him, but it's too hot down here. But he's doing well.
Yes, amen.
My daughter said the other night, she says, Mom, we're looking at him like a science experiment. He's doing good. They said they sent him home to die.
Yeah.
I said, right. I said, look at it. I said, people need Jesus and people need GNLD.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, we have a little mini question and then we are wrapping it up. This big guy tackled me.
Victoria, I got a question from my friend Steve over here. He wanted to know where can he get those hot pink fringy pants?
The what?
Tony, I should have known you'd have.
Wait, I didn't hear that. What was that?
Where does this gentleman in the back wants your hot pink fringy pants?
Oh, everyone needs a pair, I swear.
I think we'll wrap up the Q&A with that. Victoria, do you have any final comment to us?
The what?
I said I think we'll wrap up the Q&A with that. Do you have any final comments to send us off with?
Yes, I do actually. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your time and for you guys all sharing your stories with me and also allowing me to share my story with you. It's been a tremendous blessing to come back into doing an in-person event and be in such a place of such faith and such hope and such love. And so I want to send that all back to you guys with all that you guys have brought to me as well. And if you're ever going through that storm, know that the sun will shine again and that rainbow will come, and do your superhero pose and tell that challenge to face it, embrace it, defy it, and conquer it. So thank you, everyone. Keep focusing on that gratitude and keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's been such a blessing and such a gift from God to be able to speak to you all today. So thank you. And thank you, Josh. Thank you.